Hi everybody, welcome to Archie Marathon. We are here with Naturally Wood, and here is Vancouver in British Columbia. He's Kevin Huey, I'm Andrew Maynard, and we're going to check out the timber industry and explore everything mass timber. Join us, please.
Let's go that way.
This way? Oh, you're still here. Come on, hurry up. You're an idiot.
This episode we'll be checking out the Okanagan region, well known for the wine and produce. After flying into Vancouver from Melbourne, we pretty much headed straight to the Okanagan region. We stopped by the cute little town of Hope, where we checked out this awesome landscape, mountains and river, even saw an eagle.
Is that an eagle? Hi.
And onward to the heart of the Okanagan Valley, Kelowna, and one of the fastest growing cities in British Columbia and in Canada. We're here to check out a few building types, starting with a mixed-use office and retail development called The Exchange, as well as Sandhill Winery next door.
We're visiting Faction, which are the developers, builders and architects behind this really interesting area called The Exchange, where there's adaptive reuse, such as this building, and there's brand new buildings as well that have used NLT, nail laminated timber. You can see that it's adaptive reuse. This old warehouse, and look at that beautiful trussed timber structure up
From
there.
the 50s.
Really hot. But then there's this screen, this wall, but this is actually a prototype of how they built the other building. This is a floor section that's all nail laminated timber. So what that means is there's no glue. It's just each board is nailed to each other, and this is the floor, this side here. So you've got to imagine it turned that way. And that's all it is. That's what you see from below. And then above, you actually end up with basically plywood that covers this, and then a rubber flooring for sound, and then a self-leveling cement screed over the top of that. So simple in a commercial building. So honest and beautiful. Hidden in amongst the reused timber trusses, you can see some of these. So that's a new bit of structure just propping up the old structure.
It's a parallel strand lumber, PSL.
But what's good about it is there's a real clarity, and you can tell what's old, what's new, what's a different technology. I love that sort of juxtaposition. There's an architecture word. Oh, this is cool. They've actually used the nail timber, the nail laminated timber as the step. And look, it's actually the right dimension for that step.
I like how they've left that exposed while the high traffic area is tiled.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of PSL there. Parallel strand lumber.
Look, made in Canada. And it's beautiful because it almost looks like a plywood from above, but then on the side you can see where the strands are. So you imagine you just get a bunch of wood chips and a bunch of glue, and then you just compress it, huge hydraulic press, to glue it all together to form that post. Look at these beautiful old trusses. Some of them were water stained as well. And then look at this old post here, bolted and nailed. So it's similar technology. And then this hybrid, this is where the hybrid starts. You've got that PSL clamped on to the old steel top, the old iron top, and that then picks up where you can see it's a bit more ramshackle. Some of the beams are rotten, so they've had to reinforce the old flooring here with this newer bit of timber. The same technology, timber technology, but great clarity in what's old and what's new. Kev, this is cute.
Why is there a ramp there?
Yeah, speaking of adaptive reuse, so that's the old loading dock for this warehouse, and then they've just put the cabinetry straight over the top of it and left it here, so the story of the building's still etched in. Some of the buildings are adaptive reuse, some of them are new. There was a building that actually got knocked down completely, and they reused some of the timber to create their own glulam, which they've used elsewhere. And then here, the mulch, the leftovers of the concrete, instead of putting it into landfill, they've used it in their landscaping. So they've tried to keep all of that material and all of that carbon on site.
Pretty cool. Recycled concrete. And that's just a raw Corten finish.
Yeah, so they put up the Corten shiny. They didn't apply a treatment to it, so it's naturally rusted. It's cool when you come under the soffit, they've run the same quartet under here and you get much less rust, but you can really see where the water's traveling where it isn't. Oh, look at this pattern at this end. Look at this. The capillary action coming off there.
It's pretty.
Yeah, it's really pretty. I bet you there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't like rust, but that's so natural and beautiful.
Check this foyer space. All that is nail laminated.
The same technology as the floors throughout the building, and you can see one of those floors just there. This is a void space, so that's actually the floor for the third level. And the way that they've actually put the timber together, the nail laminated timber, we've done that for a couple of reasons. Aesthetics.
Looks nice.
Looks nice, but also sound. So it actually breaks up the sound. And you can tell this is quite a good sized space, but it's a softer sound. There's not much reverb. The timber itself is untreated, so it's raw. And the services, you can see the way the conduits for the lighting, the sprinkler system is all held off from it. And then it's just screwed straight into it. You think about any other material, it'd be so hard to fix that.
Yeah.
But it's just screwed straight into the timber.
And then this is pretty amazing though, just a cantilever stair. Usually we put steel plates through it just to make it cantilever. Every point where there are the support pins for the glass balustrade, that's actually the structure tying all the way back.
This is cool. This is where you can see the glue laminated timber, major structure, the NLT, and then look, this is reclaimed from the building they had to knock down, and there's even water staining on it because it was such a leaky old building that the structure got wet, and they've just left that in place.
You can really see the change of material there.
From the old glulam to the new glulam.
Yeah.
And then the other cool thing about this office is for a mech and elec engineer. So they're just basically showing off. They're showing everything they deal with every day. They're just using it as a canvas over that ceiling.
It's cool they can embed the services into the grooves.
They're hunting Smurfs. God, I used to have a Smurf just like this guy. This is so nostalgic. Who puts a cactus garden in an office where children are? Climbing gym.
You're not climbing, Andrew.
The old truss is pretty cool. Look at that, they've left that in place. And then the flooring, you can see how small the original beams are. So they've actually just nailed on 2 new bits of timber to strengthen all of that. And they did that in situ. They didn't remove the old framing.
That's clever.
Yeah, simple, beautiful. We're at the winery that's right next door to the exchange. And what's really interesting about this, all 4 pieces are connecting with that steel bracket. But then when you go to the next one, you can see that it
continues through.
Yeah, so that actually goes through,
Not
but then it goes to another bracket of 4. So that means they've created the biggest beams they can that can easily be brought into place by a crane.
That's the whole point about mass timber, right? You're using manageable pieces of timber to make them look really big and perform like really big pieces of timber, hence mass timber.
These are actually glulam. I thought they were solid timber.
Oh, yes.
And so you just get the concrete footing, the steel plate bolted through. So all you've got to do is drop that into place. And then the steel plates use the sleeves for the structural to bolt against. And just like we saw with the other buildings, there's just like an honesty to it. You can see the way that it's built. It's not concrete covering steel. It's not elaborate, it's honest.
Large pieces of timber spanning the whole width of the whole building.
It's really lovely that in the barrel room, it's got a similar language. The direction of the timber barrels and then the direction of the glulam.
After lunch, we continued on to Penticton to stay and check out the mass timber building at the Penticton Lakeside Resort.
We are at this incredible hotel that is 6 stories high and it's built out of CLT and glulam. And so much of it's exposed. How the hell do you do that? Like legislatively, like just even fire is prohibitive to exposing timber the way that they have in this building. It's incredible. You walk through the corridors and you can see the glulam on show. You can see the 3 meters by 12 meters CLT panels. Monstrously big panels.
And it's built in 1 year.
I think that's for a couple of reasons. They've built it locally, so it's just here with materials they've got. They also prefabricated other elements to the building, so they could get really organised and just do it in one small hit.
And saving a lot of money in the process.
But the other great thing as well is...
it's lightweight.
It's a light building.
So less structure in the footing, in the ground to hold it up.
Yeah.
This is a floodplain, right? It's between 2 lakes. It's like a floating little pavilion.
Oh, just
A
floating.
six-story pavilion. That's the same column we saw upstairs.
Yeah, right.
Coming down, yeah. It almost feels very Japanese. I love the darkness of this
Yeah.
in here. That's very Japanese.
Even the way that the beams intersect into the top of that column as well.
Yeah. Look at that darkness. It's amazing. And it's becoming concrete here. It suddenly becomes a concrete column.
Oh, so that's like a concrete column that's the same dimension as the timber one.
Yep.
And just transitions through.
And because I guess for structural reasons, seismic reasons, but also this is a floodplain, so it's moisture reason. Yeah, you can see the glulam steps and then just filling in. This is still pretty solid panel.
Don't kick the building. Stop kicking the building. He's terrible. This is why we get thrown out all the time.
So no wonder it kicks buildings.
Yeah. Tado Andrew's allowed to kick his own buildings. Look at this, though, Kev. That concrete beam that you pointed out, this is the rod off it. And then that picks up the front of one glulam tread and the back of the other one. And then there's just one little god bolt.
You're undoing it. See, the underside of the stairs as well, instead of solid block, they cut out a notch. You get the ability to see through.
The other thing, I don't know whether this is deliberate or not. Do you know? But a lot of these are actually the centre grain of the log.
Oh, yes.
Is that just accidental? They're very specific about how they mill timber because each part of the log has its own structural unique elements. Maybe it's because the centre doesn't shrink in a direction. Do you know? Leave a comment.
They don't do the Japanese where they actually split the timber on
Oh,
purpose.
Yeah.
Because they will just crack like that.
Yeah, you see that in Japan sometimes where you've got the round log, they actually cut a wedge out.
To release the tension of the timber.
Yeah.
Because it's a living thing that was constantly resisting movement.
Yeah.
When it's dead, it just had to release that tension.
One of the things we've noticed when we're in British Columbia is they're really big on leave no tree behind. So all of the waste is used. So right from the structural logs down to just pellets for fuel or for OSB.
Look how dense the rings are.
What did you call me?
You're dense.
Oh, that's really important. Like in Australia, we're used to softwoods and pines where you get they grow really quickly. We're here because their winters are so long, you get so many more rings.
It's so dense.
So the black lines are in winter, so not much light, so you get lots of density, and the lighter lines, which are thicker, is summer, so it grows much faster.
Look at these ones. Whoa. And then these ones are quick. So it grows really quickly. Early, is that right? Or did it actually grow from the centre and out?
We get excited about wood. Look at this for a fire stair. Look at this timber glulam columns coming through, and then look at the structure up here. It's almost as though we're in a sauna, not in a fire stair.
666.
Do you want to come to my room?
It's your room.
That's my room.
It says it all.
Trust me, nothing bad will happen in here at all. Look at this view. CLT ceiling. You can see the gaps in it up there. I can't believe in a hotel they've left that. And then out on the balcony, you can actually see the beams, the bolts, and this whole CLT panel in between each of the hotel rooms.
So a whole plate is a structure, isn't it? It's not just a column. This whole wall is structure, and that's bolted there and there.
Yeah. There will be a steel plate in there that they will slid into.
Yeah, but the whole wall, it's not acting as a column. It's acting as it's a blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every plane is stopping it from, he's doing the bracing. He's striking a pose.
That's a lake.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Time for a beer? And of course, at the end of the day, we had to have a few drinks by the lake and reflect on what we saw so far.
The exchange was very interesting, I thought, because they've got all the skills there in-house, they did it in a way where they could hyper-localize. So they built nail laminated timber. And I don't think I've ever seen it before. No glue. That's got a whole disassembly argument to it as well, if you need to. That's one of the things that's really great about mass timber is there's a straightforwardness to it when it's done well. that bit of timber is doing that, and it's got these bolts doing this. I understand how it's working.
It's amazing to think, like, back in the day, like, they would have to cut down a whole tree, like a single tree with that length, with that size to do that.
Yeah.
Now you can cut down a much smaller tree
Yeah.
and pieces of standard lumber, basically, and just stick them together.
Yeah.
The region is well known for their produce and wine, and one thing leads to another, and we ended up at another winery, which has mass timber. Look at those massive curved glulam beams.
So we were just told that the ceiling is actually NLT.
Which again, I've seen twice today, but never before in my life.
So there must be a sort of spacer, or that they're cut sort of radially to achieve the curve, no?
Like, it's so much effort to radially cut it. I thought they're just open on top, then just insulate straight over, if I reckon. Because this is a...
How do you get the curvature, though? I mean, nailing it, because part of engineering, you need to...
Wow. Hey, this is a good video where we don't know what's going on. Can you please leave a comment? It's very interesting.
Apparently this was a theatre.
Really? What?
Maybe that's why the curves are still laser acoustics. I don't know. It's been retrofitted, apparently.
The old theatre, they're built on the street side, this new structure, which is the tasting room, and that's glulam, as we've seen throughout this area. Glulam going across, and this is epic. The glulam becomes part of the web for a massive timber truss. And then above that, CLT, that's series mass timber. Oh, that's cool. Look at the glass. The circular lights sort of play on the glass.
You get words if you like. The second day, we got up early in the morning and had to have a swim in the lake at Okanagan Beach, right next to the hotel. Well, some of us did. And as fun as that was, we had more buildings to check out. And so we drove back to Kelowna to check out the KF Centre for Excellence, right next to the Kelowna airport.
Hi everybody, we are at KF Centre for Excellence. Excellent! By John Architects, and structure and fabrication by Structurecraft, here locally in British Columbia. This is a museum to aircraft that was founded by Barry Lapointe. Barry Lapointe had two main parts of his brief, which were make it look like an aircraft, a Spitfire, and also build it as much as possible out of local British Columbia timber.
Just like these planes.
Just like these planes. So there were two reasons he wanted to do that. We're seeing on this tour this wonderful focus on if you can do it locally, support local industries, but also it stitches into the heritage of aircrafts. This is a Mosquito. This is a British aircraft built out of timber here in British Columbia. They built 8,000 in total, and 1,000 of those were built here, but the rest of the timber was sent over to Britain so they could build 7,000 Mosquitoes over there. So there's something really amazing about
the tradition of innovation on timber.
Exactly, because they were being told, you can't do that. You can't build a fighter plane out of timber. Just like we keep on hearing, you've just got to build a building out of concrete, you can't do it out of mass timber. But all of the benefits of mass timber are on show here as well. You get a much lighter structure, you get a really resilient structure, and it's easy to work with.
What's fascinating about this is the plane analogy. Instead of just looking like a plane, it actually works like a wing. It's about span. It's about having that flexibility. This is what that is. That roof, without literally looking like a plane, it's in the spirit of a plane wing.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we get really critical of postmodernism, where it's like, just make it look like this, and it's about the skin, and then chuck whatever steel you need to inside. They've worked with the new technologies of CLT and glulam and dowlam, and they've created this hybrid structure to create, basically, it's like a wing structure.
Just amazing when it comes to large span building.
Yep.
This is pretty impressive.
See it here, CWA, and this is, it's plywood. You can see the plywood. That's the Canadian Wooden Aircraft Company.
Ah, that's Northern Hemisphere's largest hydraulic door.
Yep, largest glazed hydraulic door. Look at the truss. It seems strange that you've got this truss laying down, but that's there because when it goes up, there'd be too much bending.
It becomes a beam.
It becomes a beam on the outside. Can I go on the train?
No.
So cool, this museum. Look at the incredible fighter jets they've got in this place. So you've got this incredible technology from mid-century, but look at it next to what is some of the latest technology in mass timber.
How tall those walls are.
Those walls are all CLT, cross-laminated timber, and look at the size of them. They're not expansion joints. That's a whole panel that they have manufactured off-site, brought in and just dropped.
From there all the way to there, it's one panel.
So that's about 3 meters by 12 meters, maybe even longer than that. They've lined it up with every second beam. But look at this. This is where this cable is coming through. The structural depth changes down to about 3 or 4 meters there because this is all working in tension. You think about everything's trying to fall down. That's how you think about structure. What's stopping it from falling down? This wants to crash this way. The cable's stopping it because it's pushing it back up. So in what they call the fuselage, you can see that it's a different structure in here. You've got a post and beam structure, and that's all glulam and dowlam. So it's similar to the CLT, but it's built with lumber that's just sitting vertically. And to get the structural depth, you don't have beams, you have these 2 cables sitting on those brackets going back up into it. So normally you would see a bunch of beams coming across supporting it all, but instead that's doing it all working in tension.
And look at this stair, man.
Check this out. This is an incredible bit of mass timber technology. Structurecraft built this in just 2 pieces. And you can see here that essentially it is cross-laminated timber because this timber's going that way, that timber, the end grain, is going this way, and that timber's going that way. But it's actually more interesting and more complex than that because to get this working in that shape, they've essentially used a glulam technology. That bottom element of the CLT is glulam, and they've formed it up in their factory at Structurecraft in 2 pieces, and you can see the join through there. To also deal with the stability of the stair, they've actually added a layer of concrete as well. So it's a really great example of getting materials to do what they want to do and don't force them to do something else.
So it's a composite structure.
Exactly, a composite hybrid structure. And we see that elsewhere. The timber, the glulam structure is only as deep as it needs to be, so you get these different depths because they're doing different jobs. And then where it's joined together, you get these steel sleeves, and then they just go, well, we need to brace the structure, we'll get that to work in steel.
It is amazing to see how that's a twist in 2 different directions.
Oh, imagine the amount of work that went into it. And then even things like this, where the landing is, it's actually where the expansion happens. So they've left that so that the expansion happens naturally. I love these 3 different heights of beams through here because that's what each section needed. And then you come up to this space, which is for conferences and events. And we see the same dowlam structure, but this one's curved because it's the roof. Oh, and this is the other thing, because it's a flat structure with cables on it, that means it's also a little bit bouncy.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? This is good, like protecting the timber by keeping it off the ground, letting it all run, or any water run away there. But this is actually carved out the bottom of it so the plate goes further up, which is clever because then any water capillary action doesn't get caught in between the timber and the plate. Just drips off. Nice. Smart.
Thanks, Nicolas Cage.
The cool thing about this museum is they make sure all of their planes fly. The air goes straight through it.
Oh, wow.
It's so visceral. That's where these men, but there's still all cases. Oh, there's not the machine guns on site. Terrifying.
Oh, yes, timber structure.
Oh yeah, we got wood. So look, British Columbia spruce, the wooden wonder, made here.
Okay, where are you, Andrew? Oh, there you are. What are you doing?
What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to save the fucking day.
You're an idiot.
What's wrong, my little hummingbird? He's such a font of misplaced rage. Come here.
Don't touch me.
Come on.
Don't.
What are you gonna do for me?
What do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna save the f***ing day.
And after all that shenanigans, we continued our journey south along the narrow fjord lakes, past Penticton again, and to the town of Osoyoos. And we're suddenly in the desert.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like, it wasn't until we got to British Columbia and we saw that incredible biodiversity map. And it turns out that British Columbia is the most bioclimatically diverse province in all of Canada.
Pretty dramatic landscape. And this is the Nk'Mip Desert Cultural Centre by Dialogue, designed in collaboration with the Osoyoos Indian band community. And it's all about the history and culture of the Okanagan First Nation people.
This cultural centre is both an indoors exhibition and an outdoors exhibition. And nearby they've got teepees and they've also got a pit house, which is a submerged space. You dig into the landscape and then you push the earth back over the building.
Earth-covered building, nice and comfortable, thermally.
Yep. And it's hidden and it returns to the landscape when it's no longer needed.
And guess what? This is an earth roof.
This is an earth roof on rammed earth walls.
But also there's some interesting timber in there. Let's go have a look.
Check out this landscape. Like, unbelievable, the rocks, the age of this place. And strategically, what Dialogue have done is basically get the ground and assemble it, just drag it up. This is rammed earth. There is only 10% concrete in this. So most rammed earth actually has a lot more concrete in that. And there's a bit of pigment, and it's doing a couple of things. This is facing west, so it is a huge amount of thermal mass with just earth on the top of it. But also it's telling a story of age, of the millennia of the place, but also of the living culture. This continual rammed earth wall comes along and then strangely it breaks at this point. But what's really interesting is that this frames almost the identical colours of the cliffs behind. It's like deliberately framing that this is a language that is borrowed from that ancient landscape. The architects talk about they wanted to design a building that would one day be a beautiful ruin. There's something amazing about that because you can see what they're trying to do here is represent sort of the geology of the place and also respond to built history like the pit house, where one day you will walk away from it and it'll just fall back into the landscape. So there's something great about that idea of a transient existence, and that if you're no longer using the building, it just gets absorbed back in the landscape. It's gorgeous.
Love the little trickle water further down there.
Yeah, look at the thickness of this wall. That runs straight through the whole building. And even though it's monolithic, it's complete from the outside and that's west, it gets hot out there, you can feel that it's protected. It feels the thermal mass is protected on the inside. It's still cool. Three main materials in this building. There's the rammed earth, there is the turf roof, which just bleeds the building back into the cliff, and then there's this pine. And what's interesting about this pine is that it has been basically damaged by a beetle infestation, which stains the timber because it releases a fungus into the timber. And what they've done here is they've said, well, this stock of timber that's damaged, we're going to actually celebrate it here. We're going to say this is a part of the local heritage and part of the local place. But look what happens here. This timber creates this internal form and that beautiful rammed earth wall continues through, and then they've just slid that bit of glass in there. So it really blurs the line between inside and outside. You can see here the pine beetle infestation where the fungus has gotten into the timber through there. And so some people say, oh, well, that's ruined the timber, but you can see they've embraced it, said that's just a part of the story and the life of that tree.
They said 58% of the lodgepole pines in British Columbia were affected.
58, that's a huge amount.
So that's all that stuff was going to waste. They increased allowable harvest so they could use the timber before it died. It's about using what the land gives you, which connects back to the ethos of the First Nations community here.
But this is great. They've used it as finish grade.
It's a bit like finish. It's a bit like Alvaralto with reject bricks.
Yeah.
It gives it extra quality. You see that cylinder there? That's the cylinder we saw from inside.
Yep.
And that's the gap we saw earlier on
Yep.
the outside. And look at that little bit of texture.
Why is that there?
Well, I think that's a downpipe.
Oh, this is where all the water runs out, splashes down there into the creek. Oh, and that then goes along underneath and that connects back. It does, with that outer creek. So they're making sure they border the rammed earth with those stones. This is lovely too, like the thinness of the timber there and deliberately separating to that thin concrete band.
But also that concrete doesn't touch the blade ball. That's very nice.
And even the thinness of the concrete's great because they need a lot more concrete than that for the thickness of the turf roof on top. But they've actually made sure to leave that behind so they can get thinness in that concrete edge. Isn't that gorgeous? And then, oh, look at this. Look at this
What?
guy. Look at this guy. It's a rattlesnake. It's a western rattlesnake. Hey, buddy. What's your name? What's your name? So the Cultural Centre is not just an indoor gallery, it's also an outdoor gallery. You've got the amphitheatre and the turf roof, and then it just starts to break away so you can see a teepee on this side, a pit house on the left, and then if you keep walking, there's an entire pit house village just beyond those pine trees.
A pit house village.
The cool thing about the teepees is that the whole teepee would be carried on one of the women's back from the band, except for the poles. The poles they would hide somewhere, but everything else they just carry on their back to the next spot. And then you have the pit house. It's got sort of a form that mimics the nearby landscape. And the cool thing about it is that essentially they've just dug a hole and then put the earth back on top. So you don't know that it's there unless you really have a look. It also means that in winter, it's thermally very stable because it's insulated from the earth. And the great thing about it is not only is it almost invisible, but the grass itself, the turf, acts as insulation. So that this would typically be a winter house, really stable in temperature because of that mass of earth.
But this is actually compliant.
Yes, they still had to meet the modern building code, which means they had to make a couple of small changes, and the door is one of them. This, of course, is a compliant size door for the general public, but traditionally, the opening would only be as big as the largest person in the tribe. And again, you've got to think this is a winter house a lot of the time.
Wow, it smells really good.
And so we're submerged in the ground here. The earth's been dug out and then put on top of all of this pine in here. And then you've got the opening at the top where all of the smoke goes through.
I understand these structures have orientation, so they represent the 4 seasons and 4 directions.
Yeah,
That's
right.
north, east, south, and west.
So apparently this was the winter one, and that's like a bear claw.
Yes, that's one of the 4 food chiefs, black bear.
This was about roots.
That's bitter root. Anything that's underground, because that's about sprouting and birth. It's east.
Ah, okay.
So very traditional in that sense. And summertime, when things come alive and come out.
Big sun, the berries.
Saskatoon berry. West is the setting sun and autumn. And then you have king salmon, one of the 4 food chiefs.
Huge. Huge chunks of timber.
And each one of those is a tree. This is not mass timber. This is just massive timber.
Yeah.
They're pine, they're donated, but it's First Nation. It's cultural and it's educational. That's rattlesnake country. Andrew, don't go in there.
You're joking, aren't you?
We don't have insurance for that.
You're tricking me.
It's true.
You weren't joking.
Yeah. Let's love this water. We had a booking for dinner at Borrowing Our Estate Winery, where we had an amazing meal of local produce, wines, lots of wine, and where I crashed my drone. It's all right, people, we got it. Canadian wine. It's pretty good. Cold climate.
We have enjoyed it a lot. Hence the sunglasses this morning.
Lightweight.